Okay. Welcome back to another edition of A Warrior Spirit, where we let the inner warrior shine in their light. Today, I have the great honor and pleasure of a friend of mine, a mentor, Dr. Rob McCleland. Um, Dr. Rob is known to me because I was a part of the John Maxwell program. And at that time, Dr. Rob was a high level associate of John's who helped take his career to the next level. And for some people who don't know, I'm always amazed when people don't know who John Maxwell is, but he's the Tony Robbins of the business world, just doesn't walk on fire. So,
Good description.
um, Dr. Rob, I really appreciate your time. Thank you for joining me. And, you know, it's an honor.
Yeah, well, I'm honored as well. Even when my wife would say, "Remind me who the podcast is with," and she goes, "Oh, you love that guy." I said, "I do. He's a classy guy, a great guy, and I'm honored to be on. So let's go."
Well, Dr. Rob, first off, anyone, I used to work at Grand Canyon University here in Arizona, and I used to help people get their doctorate degree. I was their advisor that helped keep them on track and on pace. So I know the hard work and effort that it takes to have the DR in front of your name.
Mhm.
What is your specialty in? Just curious.
Yeah, organizational alignment. I'm one of the top. I don't want to brag, but I mean, the fact is, I'm certainly one of the top 10 in the world in that area. Specifically, what happens is in larger companies, if you don't get the C-suite in really good alignment, it's going to show up. It does every time where what they say is we want what's best for the company. What they really want's best is for their career or their part of the company. And if they shine and it happens to look better than the other guys, okay, well, that's fine. But the company will never be at its top if you have that guys doing that. And so most of the time I have the privilege of doing that. We set up a new structure in that the top executives, I'm talking like Harvard MBAs, they don't get paid very much, maybe 100K a year. But if the company does better, they get rich. And so now for the first time ever, everybody at the top saying what's best for the company, not what's best for me or my section of the company. And so
Right.
organizational alignment is one of the specialties I did in the PhD program. And I've used that in all of my companies that I've run. And so I'm a big Patrick Lencioni fan and friend of his, and very thankful for the role he's had in my life.
Well, I mentioned on your intro, John Maxwell
Mhm.
and your association and affiliation with John and helping take his company to the next level.
Yeah.
I've always known you as an energetic, upbeat go-getter,
Mhm.
but I also know a little bit of your backstory, and life wasn't just all love and jollies growing up, was it?
No, it wasn't. And it's funny you'd say that. I was a lawyer once who heard a little bit of my backstory and said, I just came to you because I owe you a huge apology. And I thought, well, life is easy if you're have a silver spoon in your mouth type thing. My backstory, unfortunately, I did not have a good childhood at all. My mom was married and divorced at least 4 times that I know of, probably more. But with zero exaggeration, she would go out to a bar, or in those days they called them tavern in our town, and come home with a different guy every single night, drunk. And then there's 3 little kids in the home, me and my 2 sisters. So you had to fight for your own, and that's where I grew up. It was Section 8 welfare housing. I remember one night when I'm laying in my room and all of a sudden the entire ceiling falls in because the swamp cooler had leaked through and got all of that sheetrock wet. So now it's wet sheetrock everywhere, rats running around because they were up in the attic, that type thing. Being a kid, I was probably in, I don't know, third, fourth, fifth grade, something like that, but I just start bawling. I'm scared to death. What do you do? Are these rats going to eat me? I'm covered with all this stuff. I've only got one pair of clothes that I can wear to school. So I go to the neighbor's house because we couldn't afford a telephone and use their telephone, start calling all the bars. She comes home with some dude I'd never seen. And they're like, oh, look at this. And they sit there and they pour beer on it and they get back in the car and they leave. And I just
Oh,
thought, I hate my mother. And so if you can imagine a kid who went through a really hard time and then he has all these insecurity issues, he's trying to prove himself, just somebody love me. At the same time, he's got all this hate that's holding him back from everything. And so by God's grace, I had some things to work through and it's taken a lot of work, but I'm very, very thankful now for the things that have happened in my life. because I know A, you can't do it alone. B, you got to have good help, people who will love you enough to say something. And then C, we get to walk along other people and see them do well. And that's my greatest joy in life.
Well, I know firsthand your loving, giving heart. Even tonight is an example that you just got off a plane from a long trip, and here you are, taking one last moment out for this. So, um, I also know from personal life of personal trauma, it takes some kind of mentor, somebody that you looked up to, some kind of help that turns your life around and shows you the positive way. Because there's so many people who end up with yours and I's story who end up not making it.
Right.
It takes an internal fortitude and some guidance. Who was that? Who was that in your life that really showed you a better way?
Yeah. Two people. And Del, I just want to tell you this, and for your listeners, because there's some of them who are thinking, I'm on the other end of that. And I just want to say, you don't have to be. That warrior spirit inside of you, you don't have to be. Maybe you have been all of your life. That's okay. Tomorrow's a brand new day. And first, there was a family in our neighborhood during my fourth grade through freshman and high school years who watched out for me. And I was friends with their son, who is affectionately known as my little brother. And so they're always saying, hey, just come eat at our house, come do that. And I'd go to their house, they'd have like milk and real peanut butter and jelly and all these things that we didn't have. And I just thought, A, they must be so rich. I didn't realize till later, like, wow, they didn't have very much money, but they had a lot of love. Eventually, when things really went bad with my mom, there was a bunch of police stuff involved. They just came to me and said, just come stay with us. So I moved in with them and then never went back. And so all the trips home during college to my family times for Thanksgiving was always to their house. And I had a family for the first time, no money, but a lot of love. And so that was very meaningful, got me through that time. Then as I graduated college and I kind of had this, let's go get them, let's take on the world attitude, a gentleman named Fred Broling. And Fred Broling is an amazing, amazing person. He reached out to me. He heard me do a message once. And he goes, it sounded like you used a couple of sports illustrations. I said, I did. He said, well, my wife and I kind of like sports. Would you like to go to a tennis match with us next week? And these are in the days before cell phones where you had the long phone with the curly thing to the
Yeah,
wall.
yeah, yeah.
And I hold it in my stomach and I'm talking to my wife. I'm like, some dude wants to go to a tennis match. She's like, a tennis match? I go, yeah. And she's like, yeah, sure. I said, yeah, that sounds good, Mr. Bowling. He said, call me Fred. That sounds good, Fred. So we end up meeting him, going out to lunch, go to this tennis match. It's US Open men's finals, Agassi versus Sampras,
Oh, wow.
box seats. Where Jim Nance and the mayor of New York are in a box behind us. And in the box it says Colorite Plastics. I said, do you know Mr. Colorite? He goes, I am Mr. Colorite. And he was a guy like us who had come out of this really hard situation, small, everyone teased him, brutal, just went to college, but he's pretty smart. And at the right time, he was CFO of a company, and there were 5 companies together that Kraft Foods owned, the same ones who do Kraft macaroni and cheese. They were going to sell them all off. And he went out, put together the financing on it, even though he had no money himself. He knew whoever runs these companies, if they do it the right way, they can make a lot of money. His wife said, I'll pray for you. Go talk to somebody. So he went out and talked, got a letter for $120 million, a letter of credit, and went to Kraft Board, bought the companies. And you would never know any of that. To me, he was just this nice guy. Well, he ends up kicking my butt for me for the next 30 years. He's my business mentor and my friend. But it was about a year into our relationship. I said, hey, Fred, I don't have a dad and you don't need another son. That's not what this is about. But if I ever did have a dad, would you pray about maybe a couple times a year? Could I just call you and ask you stuff and talk through it with you and get your perspective? And he said, no. And I said, okay. He goes, no, I won't pray about it. I already know that's what God wants me to do. Yeah, I'd love to do that. And as of that day, he started acting like he was my dad. He had no right to, except he loved me so much. He just chose to for no reason. And I've made some really great business decisions over the last 20 or 30 years. And I don't think I've made any of them. My wife and I have prayed, we sought God and took Fred Broling's advice, and it's worked out pretty darn well. He's now 85 years old. When we were young, they would take us on vacation. This May, we're taking them on vacation on a cruise in Europe or something. I don't know what it is. And
That's awesome.
so where do you get mentors like that? And so now you and I get to be that to other people.
Oh, I love that. First off, it takes an enormous amount of courage for someone to step up and say what you said to him, because that's showing in a vulnerability.
Mhm.
And coming from the world you came from, being vulnerable has got to be pretty tough,
Mhm.
because you learn to be, rigid and self-sufficient, and you don't show that vulnerability.
Mhm.
So kudos to you for having that courage to do that.
Thank you.
Um, you said your mom was married several times. Why did you choose to take the fourth husband's last name?
It was the third husband.
Third husband, sorry.
Yeah, and that's okay. And it's because I think that's when I was in second or third grade and you had to start putting your names on all your papers.
Mm-hmm.
So I was born uh, Robert Ray the third. Then I went to Bobby Filbert, and then Robert McCleland with him as the last name. And then it ended up being Rob. And because we moved to Montana and everyone there only had one syllable name, so I became Rob. It stuck. And ever since then, it's just Dr. Rob. And what's really funny is people call me Dr. Rob all over the world. I've spoken in 50 countries. Obviously, you were very gracious to say, I had the privilege of running two of John Maxwell's companies. And so the one of them was the big international company. We had a blast doing it. And so I've got 700 podcasts. I got all this stuff, but they're all labeled Dr. Rob. And so everyone calls me Dr. Rob. For a long time, I wanted to go, no, that's okay. Just come around. And then I finally like, A, I earned the stupid thing. B,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not respecting them for them trying to honor me. And so my wife would say, he is Dr. Rob, but don't worry, he doesn't believe his press clippings. And
I love
that's where I came out on this. And so, yeah, I took the last name McCleland, and it's just been Dr. Rob to most, but it's been good.
So how did you meet your wife?
Oh man, what a dream. She's from University of Montana. She was the first person at University of Montana to ever go on staff with an organization that used to be called Campus Crusade for Christ a long time ago. It's now
Mm-hmm.
called Cru. And so she goes on staff with Cru. They assign her to Sac State. Well, I had heard probably a year before that someone like me could be forgiven. And I thought, no, you don't know me. Could not happen. I mean, I was still searching for someone to love me and all those insecurities. And even in college, pledge class president of the largest fraternity and doing all these leadership things. But it was all just this somebody love me, I'm worth loving, type thing. I didn't know that at the time. And so I heard this, and then I found this little thing that says, well, you can't love God or say you love God unless you love other people who you can see. And then I decided, well, I can never do that because I'll never love my mom. And then I found a little teeny booklet, and I think it was along the lines of how to forgive by faith, and the whole idea that this isn't a feeling, this is a choice, and it's by faith. And began following what somebody had done in there. And I'm telling you, within 6 weeks, I was totally in love with my mom. Hadn't talked to her yet, hadn't talked to her in 8 years, praying for her, no malice in my heart. And I decided right then, okay, God is real. Forget all this stuff, but he is real because there is nothing that could change my heart of stone, turn it into a heart of flesh. So I had started that journey. I was in this group called Campus Crusade. I was one of the student leaders. We get this new staff lady. So there's about 5 of them who are on staff. And I'm just like, oh my goodness, have you seen the new staff chick? She is so awesome. She's godly. She's fun. She's from University of Montana, and I was the MC of our meetings then. So I said, yeah, we have a new person here. Her name's Dawn, and from the University of Montana. Her major was cattle wrestling. And tonight she's going to be doing, and she's just going like, this is the goofiest idiot I've ever met. But I get nervous when I was around her. And to make a long story short, 10 months later, I finally confessed, like, I'm sorry I act so goofy around you, but I just, think you're that often. And she said, well, I thought you were great for a long time, but I wasn't going to say anything first.
That's
And
fun.
that's how it started. And we've been married 38 years.
Well, congratulations on that. And I know for a fact that men like you and I have to have a strong woman with us,
Yes.
beside us, and
Yes.
guiding us, because we get in trouble if we do it on our own.
Yeah. Amen. Yeah. Yeah. She's a great compass and a great best friend, and she's fun. We just have fun together.
Yeah, I love your spirit. May I ask, take you back a little bit to the growing up in the childhood,
Mhm.
because that is not fun. That is not the time when you were having fun.
Mhm.
Did you still maintain the joy that you have today, or did that come after your salvation?
What a great question. I think to all the people around me, I was that young, energetic, go-getter person. But then it was more of it's either that or let them know what's really going on, and I'm this kid who's dying on the inside. And most people will go to that side of the fence and go like, I'm a victim, I'm entitled, and my life's so terrible. And there's only people like you and I and some of the listeners. I don't know if you understand this. There's a thing called standard deviations. Like this,
Hmm.
just about everybody fits within that. Then you get outside of two standard deviations. There's only a 4% chance this could possibly be true outside. And it's way over here or way over here. And so we're part of that 2% who went through all that and still came out positive on the other side. My hero in life is my little sister, and she did not come out positive. I mean, she
Mm.
went to prison and drug addict and alcoholic and you name it, she's done it all. And that's why they're shocked when I've done psychological testing and they said, something's wrong here. You couldn't have gone through that. And you're saying you've never been in prison or never been in jail. And so I stole a line from the movie Stripes a long time ago. I'm doing the psychological testing. The shrink's sitting there and he goes, so how many times have you been convicted of a felony? And I
Mhm.
said, convicted? None.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just like, well, what? I said, no, I've never been arrested for a misdemeanor. And they're like,
Hmm.
that can't happen. And he said, and he's the one who explained you'd have to be 1 in 50 chance that it could even be true. And it's probably not even true then. So they put me through a whole nother battery of tests. And I'm like, okay, we know what to do. And they wrote it all up and said, this guy's different. Well, years later, in my master's program, I learned a word called prevenient.
Mm.
Prevenient grace. That's the grace God shows you in your life before you ever come to salvific grace, to
Hmm.
salvation, just so your life doesn't, you don't totally kill yourself and turn into a vegetable type thing.
Hmm.
And I am the poster child of prevenient grace. God was just, for whatever his reasons are. So to many people, yeah, I was like that, but I was also hard to be around because all it was about how great I was. And so I thought that's what I thought people must love people who are great. So I'll just try to tell everyone I'm great. And it ends up, they just thought he was a sanctimonious idiot, but you don't know that when you're a kid.
Yeah, you don't know that, and the prolific part, your sister unfortunately went the other route, and some also take it to the extreme of non-existence. They take
Yeah,
themselves out of it.
right. Many.
So your grace of God kept you from all of that.
Mhm.
Um, but that just means that you have a prolific life coming for you, and you have changed hundreds, if not thousands, millions of lives
Mhm.
behind the scenes, many who will never know your name, but you had a hand in their own journey and their own change. When you stop and think about that, because I know you have,
Mhm.
even if it's not for the
No, I
accolades.
did the math once to figure it out because of what we were doing in Maxwell and the part I was doing and
Yeah,
responsible on the world. And once I got to 1 million, I just thought, that's so humbling. Who would even think of it? So
yeah.
I don't think of it. I think I get up tomorrow and I've got to be the very best I can for the people in my life who need someone who will show up, who will love them unconditionally, but will also love them enough to say something. I had a conversation in my garage tonight. I have a perfectly clean, very organized garage. And the shrink said, that's part of your childhood. You have to always have one area of your home that looks nice. I said, that's true. I had never thought of it that way. So for me, it's my garage, put on oldies music, got my refrigerator, and he's coming over. He goes, I love our garage talks. Can I run something by you? And so here's this high level executive that, oh my goodness, who is he to listen to me at the same time, have influence in people's lives that this guy will influence hundreds of thousands. And he, works for an organization that does that kind of stuff. But he just really needed somebody who would A, listen, but B, tell him the truth, not just what he wanted to hear. And that's how God's wired me up.
And what does your wife do now?
Yeah, she's a coach. So she's a professional coach. She, by choice, only chooses to have 4 clients at a time.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you a quick story, and if she was here, she's like, no, no, don't tell that. But I just learned of it yesterday. There was one of her ladies that she coaches who's once a month because it's a financial thing, and the lady would love to have Dawn every week, but she can't. She can't afford it, so she only gets once a month. And my wife loves her clients more than anyone else I've ever seen. She goes, it was the sweetest thing ever. And I go, why? She goes, I had a meeting with Juliana. And the Zoom call comes in, and she sees me and she starts crying. And she goes, and I know, I love her that much too. And she said, we had the best time. And so I had to work with my wife because she'd give everything away for free all the time. And I'm like, that does not work. You can't do it that way. But how much Juliana appreciates that because she knows it's not free. It's once a month, and anything Dawn's helping her with. But Dawn will be seeing her things every 4 or 5 days. I'm like, you're the biggest over-delivering coach I've ever seen. Apart from that, I have heard her say to a Silicon Valley executive's wife who asked her, Dawn, what do you do? And she said these words, you've met Rob, right? And they laughed a little bit. She goes, I take care of all of that. And that's true with the schedule and some of the things that she and I have the privilege of doing. It's a full-time job taking care of all this.
So, as you've mentored and helped and changed lives, do you sit back and just marvel at the plan God had for you and where you are today versus where you were when you were growing up?
Yeah, I really don't. I'm very, very grateful. But I don't sit back and marvel as much in that I'm always thinking, okay, God, I was faithful in these things. I kind of blew it here. I need to ask you to forgive me here. But overall, what's your plan? And let's get after it tomorrow. So to me, it's still a thing in process. And I tell you, we live in San Diego, California. You can't afford to live in San Diego. You know what the taxes are here? My taxes went up 31% the day I moved here.
Jeez.
I come from a total welfare family. She comes from a little family in Montana, and we live in San Diego. And it's stuff like that. Every time the wheels touch down here, I want to start crying, going, God, who are you? And so he has blessed us beyond our wildest dreams. And so when I think of the life he's given me, I think he's been so good to me. But my favorite part of my life happens to be living in San Diego and having conversations with guys like you who are like, what a quality guy. I've got to learn so much from this guy, but to see even in the short time we were able to spend together and some of the things that you did in your speaking, that were you just phenomenal, how much you improved and opened up and stepped into that. And so as you will know, you get a chance to meet and talk with a lot of people, but the ones who really take it and run with it, those are the ones that you want to sit back and go like, oh, it's a great life.
Well, I appreciate the impact you've had on my speaking career, and I've been on more stages now because of it. And one of the things that really helped, well, first off, I got over my own imposter syndrome and, realized that I've been doing this for 40 years
Mhm.
just with not with the title, right? So
Mhm.
I'm not a newbie. I just
Mhm.
knew to call myself, whatever. So
Mhm.
once I got over that, it was a whole lot easier. But you also taught me the value in authenticity. And instead of like you, where you were early on putting on a show and just trying to be loved by everyone because you had this facade, once you stepped into your authentic self, that's when
Mhm.
the world changed. And you taught me, that the authentic self is the better version of that self. And it makes you a more impactful in
Mhm.
the people you help because now
Mhm.
you're relatable. You're not just putting on a show. So I think that's a huge valuable lesson that I now try to impart to my clients as
Well,
well.
yeah, and I just want to tell everyone, every listener that hears what you just said, that's the most important thing that's been said so far. And I just love that. Think about this. I'm crazy. I'm weird. I'm out there. And some people go, yeah, not for me. That's okay. A ton of people, though, I would say most friends are like, he's crazy and out there and weird, but he's loving. And so I
Mhm.
love the guy. And there and so I get to be me and they love me in spite of myself.
Mhm.
But at the same time, they know you want to get something done. I mean, one of my famous things, I'm writing a book now, and people don't know this stuff, but I broke into a nuclear facility, with my daughter, just because we're driving down the road. She says, "What's that?" And I said, "Well, they don't like visitors there. Let me tell you what it is." She goes, "Dad, can we go see it?" And I'm like, "No, sweetie, that's not a place they have visitors or anything. Can't go in there." She goes, "Dad, please." And I said, "Sweetie, that's not a possibility." She goes, "Dad, I know you. You can do anything." So I whip the car around right on I-5. My wife starts praying, "Dear Jesus, he'll know." And she actually looks at me and I'm like, she goes, "Rob, I'm begging you, not to do this." And I said, "I appreciate that. Just do exactly what I say." And we pull up into this huge prison-like setting, barbed wire, everything. The little guy comes out and he goes, "Yeah, excuse me, sir, can I help you?" And I said, "Do exactly what I do." Everyone look at him. I said, "Wave to the nice man." And we just kept driving in. And it's just like a movie you see in the all of a sudden there's this yellow light going off and phone and, sirens and all this. We drive in, I'm not kidding, it's another at least quarter mile. There's a guy out there now, he's got all the bullets and big machine gun, full fatigues, and out there in his hand, and he's standing just like this in front of the car. So I stop the car and he hits the thing and, like, "Hey, what?" And he comes around the side. I said, "Wave to the nice man." And we all waved to him. I just started driving again. So now we get up to the nuclear facility. This is like, it's like, it's right there. We're in the shadow of this nuclear facility. And all my thing is let's see if we can get to the machine guns. A battalion of soldiers surrounds our car. I'm not kidding you in any way. They're pointing their guns at us. This big general guy comes out right in the middle. It divides, and here comes a tank. And I go, "We got to the tank. We made it to a tank." And I pulled down the window. I was like, "Sir, you cannot be in this area. This is a highly restricted area." I said, "Yeah, to get back on I-5 South, there's got to be a shortcut through here. I don't want to go all the way back to the freeway. If you could just point that out, I'll be out of your hair right away." And like, "Sir, you cannot do that." I said, "Look, you and I both know there's got to be." And he's like, "Sir, you must turn." I said, "Officer, is there any way?" He goes, "No." I said, "I'm so sorry. Thank you, officer." He goes, "Not a problem, sir." And I turn around, we're driving out. We go back by that guy who was had hit our car and Mr. Tough Guy. And I said, "Whatever you do, don't look at the nice man. Just look straight ahead." We drive back out. We get about 2 or 3 miles down the freeway. I whip the car over. We're out on the side of the freeway, high five and happy dance. It's like, we made it to a tank. Okay, so that's me. When John Maxwell said, "Rob, I don't think it's possible to get behind the borders of every country of the world." And I said, "John, we will either do that, or when they find my body, it will be pointed in the direction, but I'm not going to fail." And he hired me and we got it done. And
That's
so
awesome.
I want to be the person who takes whatever is in people and says, "Let's go. If this is the time, let's do it." I in no way, in any way, believe I should have broken into a thermonuclear or a nuclear facility. Okay, that was wrong. I had to, repent later. But let the record show I'll get some stuff done, And so just right now, I'm hoping as people hear this and what you said, becoming your authentic self, I didn't get any of that done when I was not my authentic self because I was trying to
How
please.
old was your daughter? How old was your
Now
daughter?
is 30, and I think she was probably 6 or 7 at the time. I told
And
her,
I would,
this is probably 6 years ago. "Hey, Boo, I'm giving a talk and I'm talking about the need for leaders to be honest." And I said, "As far as I'm aware, I've never lied to you, And Dad, we take me to Disneyland? Probably. No, say yes. Well, Lord willing, we'll see. No, Dad, say yes. I know what you say. You say, let your yes be yes and your no be no. If you say yes, I know we'll do it. That type thing. And I got the nicest thing back. I'll just say it real quick because I want to start crying. But she goes, "Dad, you've ruined my relationship with more guys than I can say." She goes, "Because guys lie all the time. They just want to get
Mhm.
your pants or whatever." And she goes, no, you've never lied to me. And I know there's one man in the world I can always trust. And I'm just bawling, going like, you're the greatest daughter ever, that type of thing. And this is a daughter I've visited in jail before, that type of
Yeah.
thing. But she's awesome.
Well, I bet you that's still one of her favorite memories ever is
Yeah,
having the tank roll up. And
yeah, yeah. And she's the same way I am, unfortunately. But she's like, oh, don't tell me you can't do something. My dad and
yeah,
I broke into a nuclear facility.
yeah. Well,
We could forget that. That'd be
well, that's one of the things I was going to say is that, yeah, you guys had fun and you did it and you tried to get as far as you could, but you also showed her tenacity.
Mhm.
Don't take the first no. Easier to ask for forgiveness and permission,
Right.
but do it if it's in your heart anyway.
Yeah. And here's what I thought. If I call and I talk to the first guy and he says, you are not allowed to do this, then it would be full disobedience. That's why I'm saying, just wave, thank you, So in your mind, you probably know that's not a good idea. At the same time, she does know, yeah, you don't take no for no is obviously yes. We just haven't asked the right way yet.
Right. That's
But
awesome.
she gets stuff done too.
That's fantastic. In your time with the Maxwell organization, you've been to hundreds of countries. Where's your favorite place that you visited, and where do you feel that you, as a leader in that organization, had the most impact? They're probably two different answers.
Yeah. First of all, I cannot say enough good things about my time in that organization. Specifically, my direct boss was the CEO of John's companies, who he's now sold them to, is Mark Cole. And Mark, he and I had some vehement disagreements, other things like that, but we always handled them and put the gloves on, duke it out, super honest with each other. And so we had a really neat trust that was there amidst everything else. And so when you think about, boy, all that looks like it's good on the surface, but what's the real deal? I want to tell you the way Mark Cole ran me and helped run our organization, absolutely fabulous. With Maxwell, I think the way that I grew the most is that here I am, the leader of the organization, and I just wanted to go get stuff done, and I'd be told no. And now all of a sudden I'm like, wait, I know this will work. I know this is better than the other way. Now, part of that's confidence and part of that's whatever else. But I had to ask my question over and over again to myself, will you joyfully submit to the authority God's placed over you or not? And so it was a wonderful chance for me to grow. It's one thing to tell your team that and to develop a great team, and we were able to by God's grace. It was unbelievable. But it was very humbling for me in some of those situations because I was not used to saying people telling me no, and I had great reasons. And when John, it's like, John, obviously I haven't explained this well enough because it's a great idea. And he's like, yeah, no, it's a no. And I'm like, okay, he's like, Rob, this conversation's over. And I'm like, yes, sir. Yeah. Oh man, was that hard. And so then I'd go back and I'd think, what did I do wrong? How should I have done it differently? What about this? And then let me ask you a quick question. What if the answer was just no? What if he's way smarter than I am in his little finger, and so I think being humble and I wouldn't say getting humble, that's the wrong way to put it, but showing people that you can joyfully submit even in the disappointments. And then when they see their boss do that, they say that sets the stage, and that's going to win around the world. As far as around the world, nobody ever thought we'd be able to get into the North Koreas, the Somalias, and some things like that. A couple places that are unbelievable. It's like you can't get into them. Djibouti, and as far as doing anything, because think about this, we're going in and teaching character-based curriculum from a Christian perspective.
Mm.
You go to a country like Maldives or Maldives, depending on how they want to pronounce it. It's a Muslim country. You can't even be a citizen unless you're a Muslim. They have the one Maldives that we all see, come, stay here, and all that. That's the only place non-Muslims are allowed. There's like hundreds and hundreds of islands, but that's the only one that's got the Four Seasons, all the hotels. Look at all this. but it's all the workers who are from other places and they can go back and forth to the other islands. No one else can even go to the other islands. How are you going to reach that? Because we could have gone in and reached the surf shop there anytime we wanted, said check, but that wasn't us. And so asking other people to put their lives on the line in situations, because I came up with a strategy that people, your color and my color, this would not work. And how are you going to do that? And the gutsiest one we ever did, and I don't think John ever found out about this, I think Mark did, but we had to say, yeah, if something happens to the guy, we will not only take care of getting him back to his country, all funeral expenses, but take care of his family for 5 years. And Don and I personally made that commitment without John knowing about it. It was a good, solid plan, but it was also very, very, very dangerous. That included him renting a boat and going along the shore of an unmentioned nation, doing shortwave radio and doing a little message that he had put together. And saying, so if you understand this, please get a message to this, because we have this thing that we need to share with you, and it's going to change your life forever. And so who does stuff like that, right? Well, I didn't know that guy, but I knew a guy who said, there's someone you need to meet. I met that guy and he goes, I'll tell you who you really need to meet. And it's this guy, and he's way down in the South Pacific. But everyone in that part of the world, if anything he asks them to do, they'll do it. He is everybody's person down there. He'll sacrifice for anybody. They all know it, so he'll do anything. I said, great, how do you meet him? And he's like, well, when are you going to be there? I'll text him and tell him you're coming, type thing. And so you set that up and you just keep being loving and trusting and work hard, and God opens the right doors. So that part of the areas world I had the most influence in. My heart, though, is in Indonesia and the Philippines, really more Indonesia. Indonesia is the largest Muslim nation in the world. When I'm going to Indonesia, I tell all my friends, hey, I'm going to the largest Muslim nation in the world, pray for me. They're all praying. Well, guess what? People don't know this, but Bali is actually in Indonesia. It's a Hindu island. But I'm laying on the beach in Bali getting a $9, best hour-long massage you ever had. And all my friends are, protect him, God, that type of thing. But I know some of the greatest leaders you could ever imagine in that part of the world, people who are at the highest level in that country. When I say highest level, I'm talking about this is the highest level that runs the whole country, who secretly have become Christians. And so they're Muslims, they're everything else. But when you go to many parts of the world, you'd say, what religion? Of course, I'm Muslim. I grew up here, but I'm a ardent follower of Christ. And so Muslim to them isn't a religion. That's a identity. Like I would say American, or I'm white. They'd say I'm Muslim. But it has nothing to do with defining their belief system. So we've started a little family foundation. And your people listening to this, if you know a way to help, great, but we're getting close. I want to have influence on the 4th grade curriculum for the entire nation of Indonesia, the largest Muslim country in the world. And we're meeting the right people to do that. And it's all character-based, but it's the right little things here and there that if you put it together over a year, you could figure out that there's another message in there, and that you're loved and you could be forgiven.
That is so amazing.
Yeah, that's Indonesia's where a lot of my heart is.
Well, God's grace definitely has opened doors and made you the authentic light that you are. And one of the things that I say this to my clients all the time, like our job is just to be a magnet, right? Our job is not to decide which end of the magnet is, because it has a positive and negative side. And if you just be your authentic self, the right people will be attracted to you and the right people will be repelled from you, because your energy isn't for all, it's for those you're supposed to serve. And standing in your authentic light as you are, you're attracting the right people and situations to you for sure. So
I appreciate that. And again, I want it to be known by John and everyone else. I don't say yes often, but if I say yes, it will either happen, or when they find my body, it will be pointed in your direction. And so I just encourage people, if you can adopt that and stop hedging your bets and telling someone, yeah, we'll have that for you next week, when you know it's not even going to get in until next Friday. And you're just kind of, well, I want to keep them as a client, or no, don't do that. They said, look, I want to tell you it's going to be here next week. And I'm sure my competition would. The fact is, they're out of it. We're out of it. Our shipment is that Friday. You might be able to get it faster through one of them. I doubt it, even though they said it. But I want to be straight up with you. I want you to always be able to trust what I say. And right then people will go like, you're my guy. I don't care if your prices are more. They just want
Yeah.
somebody who's going to shoot it straight with them.
It's funny because I've been a sales manager and a sales director for several companies, and one of my bosses said he went out on a couple service calls with me, right? And
Mhm.
he's like, after we're walking out of the third one, he's like, "How do you get away saying that stuff?" And I'm like, "Because I built a friendship and a relationship ahead of time that
Uh-huh.
allows me to say that kind of stuff."
Yeah.
And one of the first things that I would tell any potential client, the only thing I can promise you is that we're going to screw up. But I
Uh,
can promise you this, when we do, we're going to make it right and we're going to mitigate the times that we continue to screw up.
mhm.
Beyond that,
Yeah, we're human.
yeah,
Yeah, and I love it because I'm sure hearing that they're like, okay, that's awesome. We're all like that, but nobody says it. What else? You know, that type of
right.
thing.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I find being authentic certainly helps. What is on the horizon for 2024 as we approach this new year, new beginning?
Mhm. Well, part of it is I need a bunch of healing in my life after University of Montana got soundly beat by South Dakota State Jackrabbits at the national championship. So I want to say congratulations to you and all the Jackrabbit fans out there. Get jacked, everybody. And so that was fun that we had that little connection. In 2024, first time I've ever done this in my life, and I'm looking forward to it. You know, you think, okay, I want to get rid of all my C priorities and stop working on them. Then pretty soon it's like, if it's not a B or above, I'm not working on it. This year I decided only A plus priorities.
Wow.
I've got so many A opportunities, unbelievable. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I can't do it. And I have built my schedule such that I have two people. If you say, hey, can you do this? And it's one of the times I can't, that I'm supposed to be taking off. I say, I can't. And here's why. I have two different people that if I take anything in that time, I have to call them and get their okay because they know I would overcommit to a friend. And I just want to tell you, they don't care how much I love you. They're going to say no. And so the answer is no. Here's what I will be able to do. But I have four things I'm doing, and I have a huge meeting on one of those tomorrow. One is I'm launching another new company. It's not, I don't have enough things to do. And so I think we'll be together in March. You'll be able to hear more about that. But what about all the companies out there that they have their little 10 employees, whatever, and they have their team meeting every week? Here's how we did on the financials, or here's what we need to do the store, or whatever it is. Who's doing their leadership development? Probably no one. And it's not like the owner didn't want to. What would he do anyway? Let's find a book. Let's do, And so it's basically your leadership development for the week in a box.
Mm,
Leadership lesson. Here's fill in the blanks, the answer keys at the bottom. Take off my logo, put on your logo. Here's my 10-minute video. You teach it yourself. Here's all the teaching points on page 2. Here's where every bit of the research came from on page 3. Or if you're like, I don't want to do that, I just want to press your video and we'll fill in the blanks and we'll grow together. I want it to be something that every one of those employees can take home and share with their family, things like that. So I'm launching that company. It looks like I'll end up doing it at 197 a month. And so they'll get 4 weekly 10-minute things. So I tried to pace it, do it so it's not just for big companies, but even individuals could do it.
mhm.
Tomorrow I have a big meeting. This is crazy that I don't even share this, but I've got a wonderful little studio here I've built in my home. That really is my background. And, you try
Yeah.
to put enough stuff up there to make it look like you've done some stuff, but not like too important. And I've got the right cameras and the right lights and all that, but I hate the filming part. So with this organization, which is about 300 employees, 400 employees strong, but they do some of the stuff that they do with some filming and some other stuff. Meeting with their number 2 guy saying, I tell you what, how about if I give that to you and everybody in your organization for free, but you guys do the filming. And and so I would just go over there and have 8 lessons ready to go, batch them, do that once every 2 months type thing. And so if that turns into a yes, my life just got a ton better. Where now I just have to work hard and make sure that these are dialed in, and it's something I would want my grandkids to learn about all the things we've talked about: vulnerability and consistency and trust. And there's 5 pieces to trust, that if you do these 5 things, people will trust you. And I almost hesitate to share them because they will trust you. But if you have nefarious intent, if you're going to go be a Hitler out of it, I don't want them to trust you.
Right.
And so all those types of things that I've been studying and doing over the last 30 years. And, with all the podcasts, I've got 200 blogs, 250, something like that, to now just take that and make it super usable by people. That's one priority. My mergers and acquisitions job that I do with a company called generational.com. I'll do that, and I love it, helping business owners. Strategic growth plans, which are very, very expensive, minimum of 45,000, but companies pay that. And there's a team of people that 2 years ago ended up very, very humbling, becoming the #1 growth consultancy in the United States. #2 was Deloitte. And
Wow.
so how could I be on that team, that type of thing? Well, guess what? 3 weeks ago, they won it again. First time anyone's ever won it in 2 years in a row. And so that all the credit to that goes to a guy named T.D. Decker, who started putting the system together, got some financial backing, and they said, okay, do this, but you go find the best people you can in the world to do it and make sure they know everything you do. So if you get hit by, and so people say, how many of these plans have you guys done? Watch this. We say, none. We don't do plans. Our clients do plans. We just facilitate a world-class process. Why do our plans actually get implemented? Why are we #1? It's because of what's called the NPS score. Top growth company in the world is 48. That's Deloitte. Oh, they used to be #1. We were at 96 last year, tied
Wow.
with Tesla as the #1 product or service in the US. People hate Elon, but they sure love their Teslas, and so, like, how are you guys so good? We're not that good. We have a world-class process. And if you don't love people, they'll pick up on it in a second. But we've got like the #4 logistics guy in the world who's retired. And now any logistics company that comes in, it's like he gets those, and I get the ones who need team building, and so I do that. And then the last thing I'm doing is some of the stuff that we're doing now. I'm still going to make myself available and help younger entrepreneurs. And
Well,
so,
you certainly helped me, and I appreciate you continuing to, be a guiding light, even a busy one that I just chase from afar. But
well, and even when,
you
when we
know,
get to be together in March, and I'm so honored to speak from the same stage as you, it's going to be a blast, right? But you can ask me, hey, have you really limited it to those 4 things, or are you doing some other stuff? Because just think, if you can get a life where all you work on is A+ priorities, and the rest of the time you enjoy life and your wife, and again, I think, I have no idea, but financially that little business might take off. And so that's going to allow us to give a whole lot more to our foundation. We're at the place now, not very many people know this, but it's not private information, but we try to give away 40% of every dollar that comes in to some type of charity every year.
that's awesome.
Because we don't live in a gated community. We don't, we're normal people, but we want to have a big impact around the world.
Well, you certainly are having a big impact, and I'm just honored to call you a friend, Dr. Rob. Rob, you know,
Yeah, yeah, good friend.
nuclear.
And my old-time best friends, the
Yeah,
old ones, they all call me the Robster. So you and I are
Rob.
Robster
Yeah,
level.
we're there on the Robster level. I'll bring my tank next time.
There we go. Bring it, baby.
My wife and I absolutely send all the love in the world to you, and we appreciate all that you've done around the world and for us. And thank you for your time tonight. I know that you're,
Very, very
um,
welcome.
just honored that you're here. And I'm going to ask you one last question that I ask all my
Okay.
guests. What does having a warrior spirit mean to Rob McClendon?
Yeah, it's this tenacity is the word that you used. But do I want to look you right in the eye as I'm saying this? I am never down. I'm either up or getting up, but I'm not going to be down. And when you're down and you're just bit, and that first 4 inches of getting up is the hardest because you got to make a decision. But once you're there, it's like, I'm already 4 inches up. I might as well keep going. And so that type of tenacity, like even in my own life, the biggest setbacks have probably been my own sin or something I shouldn't have been doing. But to say, that's not going to define my life. We're going to keep going, never down, either up or getting up.
I love it. Well, I appreciate your time, and it's been an honor, and blessings to you and your wife for the rest of the year and beyond.
Thank you, sir. Great being with you. Blessings.
Have a great night.
Thanks. Bye-bye.